Good afternoon. On behalf of the Reinhart family and the Nourse family, I would like to thank you all for coming to the celebration of life for David Reinhart and Eric Nourse. I'm Phil Spears, Dave's brother-in-law. I've known Dave since he was in college. We grew to be great friends through family gatherings where we had enjoyed great conversations about faith, family, friends, and business. It was his kind and gentle spirit, his warm smile, and welcome handshake that made Dave so special and why we love him so much. My dad once said, if you have 5 really good friends in your life, you would be lucky. Well, Dave was one of my 5, and I would bet he's one of yours as well. So to celebrate the lives of 2 special people, we're going to hear from their family and their friends. Please join me in a prayer. Dear Heavenly Father, thank you for the blessing you gave us in our time with Dave and Eric. Please help heal the void that has been left in our hearts with their loss. Father, please comfort us today in our grief, especially the Reinhart family and the Nourse family. Please give a special measure of your comforting grace to Shar and Candy. Wrap your arms around them and assure them of your unending love. We ask that you give each of us healing and restoration and hope. Heal and restore our broken hearts, and give us hope that life will go on as we cherish the fond memories we share of Dave and Eric. In Jesus' name, amen. Andrew, a friend of Dave's since grade school, is going to sing a song.
Dave and I grew up together. I've known him since we were kids. Blackbird singing in the dead of night. Take these broken wings and learn to fly. All your life you were only waiting for this moment to arise. Blackbird singing in the dead of night. Take these sunken eyes and learn to see. All your life you were only waiting for this moment to be free. Oh, blackbird fly. Oh, blackbird fly into the light of the dark black night. Oh, blackbird fly. Oh, blackbird fly into the light of the dark black night. Blackbird singing in the dead of night. Take these broken wings and learn to fly all your life. You were only waiting for this moment to arise. You were only waiting for this moment to arise. You were only waiting for this moment to arise.
Thank you. Now we're going to hear some words of sharing from Craig, Dave's brother, Shar, Dave's wife, and Greg, Eric's brother and Dave's friend.
Thank you all for being here. I had the honor of going to Argentina over the last week to be with my brother Steve, Greg, and to bring Dave and Eric home. And I truly considered it an honor. And it's an honor today to be with all of you to celebrate David Reinhart and Eric Nourse. I really want this to be a celebration, and I'm going to tell a few stories. And today, if any of you, we run long, bear with us. We're going to take time to properly honor two great men. Thank you again. These guys lived life to its fullest, and until recently, I had no idea what that really meant. The lessons I've learned from Dave and Eric and my new brother, Greg Nourse, from all of you and the stories you shared will be with me forever. I hope to honor the magic of their lives today so that we leave this room with a fullness that will give us strength in times of opportunity and strength in times of challenge. Many of you have read the papers and may not have a clear understanding of what happened, so I'm going to touch on that a little bit just so that you have peace and understanding. So as you may know, Dave took off to climb Aconcagua with Greg and Eric on December 15th, and it happened to be the day after my dad's 80th birthday, and Dave delayed the trip so he could be there with the family. And Dave and Shar took a beautiful picture, and it was just, it was a fabulous time of family. They immediately took off to La Paz, Bolivia to play and spent 4 days at altitude to begin to acclimate. And just as they had on prior expeditions, they hauled their own gear and they spent days hiking and camping and acclimating as they went from camp to camp and eventually to high camp. Their selected route was called the Polish Direct, and it was first navigated in 1934 by some Germans. Dave and Eric and Greg had carefully planned and scouted their route, and except for the elevation, it was really business as usual for them. Although late in the day of the summit climb, Dave was slowed by altitude near about 22,000 feet. And strangely, the satellite phone that we own, that we send with Dave on his many expeditions, the satellites were not available when the first calls were made on Friday afternoon. So it was agreed that Eric would go for help. He went to the summit, began to look for a path down, and Greg and Dave spent the night on the mountain, in many ways with Greg holding Dave for warmth. And in the morning, Dave was lucid, and they chatted, and they agreed that Greg would head to the summit with a satellite phone to confirm that the rescue was on its way and descend to help Eric with the rescue. It was really business as usual. However, Greg's call reached Shar Saturday morning, and it set off a chain of actions here and a world away. And late Saturday, Greg reached camp first, and other climbers began to search for Eric and eventually helped him into camp. Eric was exhausted, impacted by altitude, and passed away in camp with Greg by his side after a 24-hour superhuman effort to get help for Dave. We stayed at a hotel in Mendoza, and the people of Argentina are wonderful, and I hope that everyone in this room has the opportunity to travel there. A climber who was in camp and actually worked with Greg and helped Eric sent me this note. He said, "On the way down, I doubt Eric's route had ever been down climbed solo by a healthy climber, let alone a climber in Eric's condition." He said, "I think this is an extraordinary effort, shows courage, heart, and determination to live for the ones he loved and to save his partner stuck up high." Candy and the entire Nourse family, we will be forever connected through our shared loss, and we will never forget Eric's heroism and sacrifice. Although we all know Dave and we all know Eric now, and these men were guided by their love of families, their friends, and the strength to give of themselves unselfishly. Their energy led us to new friends in Argentina, Fernando Grajales and his team at Grajales Expeditions, who carried on relentlessly to save Dave and to help with Eric. Phil Urschler of IMG out of Seattle called me 6 times, 22 emails. He had a team on the mountain, and they were all out to help. Nieves, Martha, Megan in Argentina, we thank you all, and we will be forever grateful. As many of you heard me say, we're part of a beautiful story with an unfortunate ending. However, the story is really not over, as the ending will only be written by all of us, our interaction with family, old friends, and new friends throughout the years of our lives. This is what David and Eric would want. I know I will find strength through action, guided by what would David do? What would Eric do? What did Eric do? As I eulogize my brother Dave, I know that he would chuckle with the realization that through life, he simply added friends. How many of us can say we only have friends? David could say that. Starting with his childhood in Lake Oswego to Oregon State, those he met through his professional career and through his years of adventures, Dave simply added friends. And it's through all of you and the spirit of Dave that we, as a family, find strength. The many stories that you've shared about how Dave has made a difference in your lives, the lives of others, has David smiling. David would see this as the true measure of a man, and I know Eric would too. David was a gift, and while there's no one who he loved more or gave more of himself to than his lovely wife, Shar, Dave gave to many. To honor Dave, I'd like to share 2 stories that really exemplify my brother, and one's from his work, and the other is from one of his many adventures. I had the privilege to work with Dave for 14 years, and I saw the best from him every single day, and I knew that he was special. And this story exemplifies the consistency and the quality by which Dave conducted business during his entire career, beginning as a congressional staffer in Washington, D.C., and this was sent to me by a former Hatfield staffer, a gentleman by the name of Doug Paul. And Doug, I apologize, but I've paraphrased. And Doug writes, Craig, I'm an old friend of David's. He worked for Congressman Bunn, and I handled the same issues for Senator Hatfield. As you know better than I, Dave was a class act. I remember working against Dave on a particular piece of legislation, and he was a reluctant opponent. He was a reluctant opponent because his boss didn't like the piece of legislation. Bunn was opposed, and Dave stated his position, his boss's opinion, with such professionalism that we were all impressed. And after we pushed and pushed in one contentious meeting, Senator Hatfield called me back to his room and asked me to tell him more about David. He was so impressed with his easygoing yet solid manner, the twinkle in his eye, and his ready smile. And Doug, I want you to know Dave is smiling with a twinkle in his eye. Thank you. As you can imagine, these stories have given profound comfort to Shar and our family and everyone who has gathered over the past week to celebrate the lives of David and Eric. I'm also reminded this past week of David's ability to push himself to greater heights. It's always a gift when one among us makes everyone else better. David did that, and I believe he would want us to honor his memory by doing the same. Well, we all saw this in business. A friend of ours, Wes Capsa, sent me a funny story of a backcountry skiing story from 2007 that really exemplifies Dave's ability to push himself and others to greater heights. Wes wrote, "We finally got hiking to miles and miles of flat before gaining vertical. The snow started and became deep. As we got close to our destination, the drifts became ridiculous as the wind itself. Everyone was exhausted and ready to start skiing. And your brother exclaimed, 'False summit! We have to keep going!' And those of you who knew Dave, false summits, he would push through them." Wes wrote, "I still remember how painful it was to hear those words, but we knew he was right. Dave kept his gear on and climbed another few hundred feet, saying it would be worth it. Since everyone had taken off down the hill prematurely, we were down at the bottom of the run, looking up to watch Dave, and he had easily gained a few hundred vertical feet where there were no trees, completely clear, and he scoped his best line. It's a thrill to watch skiers drop into a line so eloquently, and there are a few things more precious than losing yourself in the tranquil, simple moment of when time pauses. I feel extremely fortunate to have shared this experience with your brother, but love that its memory will be part of me forever. Thank you, Wes. I will treasure this story as well and forever carry on in David's memory the importance of pushing through those false summits. As you may know, David did all he could to come home and was working to conquer the summit of Aconcagua when he passed. David literally died climbing. 700 feet from the summit, Dave passed away with his ice axes in hand, having just landed them firmly in the mountain above him. And I have this dirty old hat, which I did not bring, but it says, "Die trying." And David did. And I love him dearly. Thank you. One last thing that I'm going to leave up here. David made moonshine. And this is really good. We had a little earlier. Quick toast to Dave and to Eric. And I'm going to leave this up here for anyone else that wants to share.
Hello, everyone. Andrew, where are you? Woodworth. Andrew, that was amazing. Thank you. Thank you all for being here today. I love reading the stories, and I love seeing everybody in this room who love Dave and Eric. It is a comfort. For those of you who don't know me, I'm Shar. I'm David's wife. It was really important for me to stand up here today and talk about Dave. I knew I could do it, and I could do it with a smile on my face, because when I think of him, it makes me smile. I am really proud of the man that Dave was, the friend he was, and the way he loved me and his family. I am proud of him for living life the way he did, one adventure after another. I'm as proud as anybody can be of another man's accomplishments. When it came to writing his eulogy, as you can imagine, I think I'm ricocheting off the wall a little bit. I had a lot of stories I wanted to tell. Dave is a really funny man. I want to tell you things about how he sings in the morning when he makes his breakfast. He makes up songs, and they're really good. How he loves to dance. I want to tell you all about the way we met and how we fell in love and how we loved each other so completely we knew we made other people jealous. We knew we had what everyone looks for, that perfect person to share life with. After several attempts, I realized I had actually already written the perfect eulogy, and many of you have already read it. It's a letter I wrote to a reporter who asked me for a statement before they ran the news that evening. And I went back to that, and I'm going to read it to you now. I'm sure you've already gathered that everyone who ever met Dave immediately liked him, and for good reason. He was a man of character. He was smart and strong and kind. He was funny and loved people. People referred to him as salt of the earth. He was that kind of man. Dave went to college at Oregon State University and afterwards to Washington, D.C., where he served as a congressional aide. Knowing that he wanted to be closer to family and the perfect weather for all the outdoor activities he enjoyed, he returned to Oregon. Dave loved being outside, and he loved cold weather. I didn't get it, but he loved it. Our garage looks like REI with racks of bins labeled for all the things he loved to do: fly fishing, hiking, rafting, kayaking, skiing, biking, running, you name it. The one thing that Dave loved most was mountaineering. He has climbed all of the peaks in Oregon, Washington, and many of the major peaks, including Denali, Alaska, Mont Blanc, France, where he and Greg Nourse skied with friend Matt Svensson, who they met while climbing Denali, from Chamonix to Mont Blanc together. Mount Valon in Switzerland. Greg and Dave just summited Mount Elbrus in Russia last year, and now Aconcagua. He's kind of a badass. Excuse my language, Mother. Dave is an incredibly logical man. He is safe and smart and calculated with his steps. He is the same on the mountain as he is in life. I have a video of Greg and Dave on Mont Blanc. The wind is sideways. It is a complete whiteout. You can barely see Dave as he starts to come into focus, head down, plugging along on the climb. The wind is hitting the mic on the video recorder, and it is so loud. It looks miserable. Greg yells to Dave, "Reinhart, how's it going?" And Dave looks up, ice crystals on his nose, with a huge smile, and yells back, "It's a beautiful day." That was Dave. He loved every moment, and he loved being up there. People, especially the wives of friends, would ask me, "How can you let him do that? Doesn't it scare you?" It scares me, yes. However, I've seen the videos of him climbing, and he radiates happiness. I know it is how he fills up his soul. It was his passion. Those men look like children on Christmas Day when they climb, and I knew the first time I saw that light in him that I would never ask him not to. Dave and I met September 25th, 2008. We were married August 20th, 2011. We have been married just 1 year and 4 months. Much too short. Now, some of you might think that I've put Dave on a pedestal, that in death he has become to me this perfect man. Those of you who know us know that I spoke that way of Dave from the day I met him, and if you knew him, you did too. Dave was not perfect. He hated chores. He rarely opened my door, and he hardly listened to me. Although that last one is probably just for self-preservation because I do go on. I would say, "Are you listening to me?" And he would say, "Oh no, I have an excellent filter." Dave was not perfect, but he was perfect for me. I am lucky that I have no regrets. I love that man with all I had, and he knew it, and he loved me back the same. We both knew how lucky we were to have each other and never took it for granted. There was nothing that went unsaid. I'm sad for myself, and that's the hardest part. But I'm not questioning the why or the how. I am at peace. There's a lot of beauty to be found in Dave's life, and even the way that he left us. This is a story about a man who lived a good life. It's a story of a man who had a family full of love who came together this past week, not just in tragedy, but it's because it's what they've always done. It's a story of a friendship so strong that they risked their lives for each other. Eric lost his life trying to save Dave's. I don't know Eric. I never met him, but these days I talk to him a lot. I will never be able to comprehend what he went through, and I know that the outcome was against everything they were fighting for. Although the ending to Eric and Dave's lives happened much too soon for all of us, There's much beauty to be found in the details. I have seen the view from where Davis passed, and it is glorious. This is a wonderful story, and I hope we can celebrate that today. And as Dave would say, it's a beautiful day.
You guys, thanks for coming and offering so much support. I've never seen anything like this. We had no idea how many people were going to be here today. We knew a lot. You know, Dave and Eric had a lot of impacted a lot of people, but this is beautiful. And thanks you guys for all your support. My name is Greg Nourse, and as many of you know, I'm Eric Nourse's twin brother and David Reinhart's best friend and adventure companion. You know, I've always known that the gift of twins was beautiful, and that being a twin was one thing I cherished most of my life. I always said, you could take anything away from me, but you can't take my twin away. You have to watch each other's backs, be there in every turn, buffer those sharp edges, laugh at each other's jokes, and love each other unconditionally. We covered each other's backs. I don't know how I'm going to fill this big hole in my life. Eric and I would talk nearly every day and plan great adventures for our futures. It was funny. We found peace when we'd talk. Our busy lives would be put on hold, and we could just talk and have long conversations. I had him on speed dial on my phone, and I'd talk to him almost every day just about the simplest things. You know, I'd look up and, oh, the sky is blue. I got to call my brother and tell him, you know. Oh, that's a good joke. I got to call my brother and tell him that one. Oh, I did something cool. I'm going to call my brother to get recognition for something cool. You know, I'd build something and I'd send him a picture of it, you know, and he would do the same things to me. We talked all the time, and it was great. It was any excuse we had, and we'd be talking. I had the utmost respect for Eric. He was brutally honest, shockingly capable, amazingly confident, and talented at everything he did. Eric had a crass, politically incorrect and negative sense of humor that not everybody understood. But I did. I seriously thought he was the funniest dude alive. He just happened to be my brother. Eric could rock climb scary cliffs without concern, kayak class 5 rapids while yelling, Yahoo! Raft raging rivers while grinning the whole time, hit the tiniest targets 50 yards away with an arrow, build anything he wanted, taking consideration of the smallest details, mountain bike the most technical trails at lightning speed, cut cord after cord of firewood in a single day, ride motorcycles both on and off road with unbelievable agility. And he surprised me constantly with all of his new interests. He complained about people talking too much, about doing things. He wouldn't waste time talking about it. He'd just do it. Eric and I met David Reinhart in college at Oregon State and have been extremely close ever since. I looked up to Dave and considered myself very lucky to have so much of his time. Shar may not totally agree, but for as long as I've known Dave, I've called him the perfect human being. He'd laugh it off, but that's the way I felt. Years ago, I remember heading down to the Rogue River to raft the wild and scenic section with Dave, and I had this new birthday book, so I hadn't really spent time looking at it, but we looked up our birthdays, and it's the birthday book where you get the year and the date. And so we read about some of our birthdays, and the birthday book would say pros and cons about all of us, and there's bad qualities and good qualities for everybody except for Dave. I'm not kidding you. If you get an opportunity to read that thing. I mean, for people born on September 30th, 1971, the book identified these people as having no flaws. I said, see, Dave, you are the perfect human being, And again, he laughed it off. For me, not so much. I didn't even want to reread mine. Dave was amazingly brilliant, supremely logical, and naturally very strong. He had the great gift of balancing his time, work, friends, family, and many interests. I was so fortunate to be part of his balancing act. Together, we climbed Mount Hood more times than we could recall. We climbed 5 different routes up Mount Rainier, oftentimes being the first to cut the route up for the season. We climbed Adams, Baker, St. Helens, multiple other Cascade volcanoes. We climbed Denali in Alaska, Elbrus in Russia, Mount Blanc in France, Mount Valon in Switzerland. We skied the Haute Route through the Swiss Alps, climbing and descending 30,000 vertical feet. We traveled through Costa Rica, Mexico. We've backpacked together over hundreds of miles in all the western states. Dave loved adventure. He loved new. He loved challenges. He loved the great outdoors, and he loved life. 14 days ago, my brother and Dave were taken from me and all of us. It was in the most unfair yet heroic way. Still strong, still feisty, still stubborn, still funny, still confident, Eric in that tent slipped away from me without warning. And it really wasn't fair. Eric worked so hard to save his good friend Dave. 24 hours at over 20,000 feet without water or sleep. He worked so hard. And when he wasn't looking, he got knocked out. Next to me in the tent, after down climbing thousands of feet of cliff, without rope, in the dark, he just started to take a well-deserved cat nap, and he never woke up. It all happened within about 10 minutes. We were trying to save Dave, and this wasn't supposed to happen. He lost his life to loyalty, to the belief that his abilities would save his friend's life. Eric loved the human experience and valued the opportunities that life offered. His heroics will become legend, and a superhero died. Dave was stricken with altitude sickness at 22,000 feet. I know what a powerhouse Dave is. He had the legs of an ox, and he had unbelievable determination. Although he was in bad shape, he fought for the top to come back to us. Dave and I spent one very long and cold night together, harnessed up to this big boulder on a steep slope. And even after I left Dave in the morning to assist my brother in getting help, he continued to fight for it. Later, he was found on the mountain, like Craig said. His crampons were dug in. His right arm was fully extended. He had an ice axe gripping the shaft. His pick was deep in the ice, and he was holding on. You could just tell that he was just driving one swing after another and took a break, and that was his last swing, and that's the way we found him. It was a beautiful scene, really, of just determination. However, altitude sickness can be very cruel, and after one heck of a fight, we lost a good friend. Although this seems so unexpected and unfair, we really got to go on, right? It'll be difficult, but it'd be a shame not to find something positive to find out in this. Eric and Dave lived adventurous lives with love, appreciation, and enthusiasm. So regardless of what our adventures might be, we should live our lives the same. To my bro and my dear friend, I love you both. You'll be dearly missed, but not forgotten. Cheers. Shar forgot to say that I also performed the wedding for Dave and Shar, and out of respect for Dave, I didn't look good enough for Shar and Dave. So this is the exact same suit that Dave bought me at Macy's to put it in their wedding. He said, do you have anything nice to wear? And I said, sure. You know, he goes, I don't think you probably do. I'm gonna. So this suit is courtesy of Dave. You can tell me I look great in that reception later.
I'm feeling a little dismayed having to follow the massing priest, the wedding priest. I don't look nearly as good. You know, a man can study all his life as a priest and pray and try to be there for people and try to know God. And yet you can come to a circumstance like this and realize that you're lacking credentials to come into this space, into the gritty realities of where men are really men, and they climb tall mountains. They strive beyond any possibility that we can imagine and win. And so in order to accomplish, at least get some street credibility with this family, I'm gonna have to start here, I guess. Help me. Oh my goodness. See, Catholics think wine is good enough. I noticed on the program that it says the lives they loved. And maybe you would have thought that should have said the lives they lived. And that would be good enough. It says the lives they loved. And that's the God thing in the world. That's the place where all of us are connected with the source. I pay attention to the providence of texts. And within my tradition, a Catholic tradition, each day, we are giving readings from Scripture to contemplate for the day and celebrate at the Eucharist. And so I was curious about what was the text today, on this day that we remember Eric and Dave. And it's taken from John's Gospel, chapter 3, and it's the text that is the very last testimony of John the Baptist, the one who recognized the one who was the perfect man. This is the text that describes that moment where finally he was asked and he said the deepest truth of his life. And all of us would wish for that chance to be able to know the time of an ending, whether it's someone we love or we ourselves are ending, to have the chance to say, finally, this is what I mean. You know, it's said, I've heard parents say this, and I have no ability to comprehend the depth of a statement like this because I'm not a married man. But I've heard parents say, it isn't right that my children should die before I do. And yet I wonder whether the parents here are wondering about that. Because you got to see your sons born and look down into their eyes and wonder what they would be, and wondered if they would be good men, and whether they would have good friends, and whether they would take the gifts they have, blessed with, and fully go for them and realize them. You wondered about that when you looked at your little one. And I'm wondering, as you sit here, whether you're wondering if it isn't a grace that you got to see when they left, too. And the fruit. Goodness, look at this room. The fruit and the respect and the admiration they had. It's a hard grace, but it's an awesome grace. You got to see. Now, Lord, may your servant go in peace, because I have seen. Not a bad thing for parents. When I was thinking about Dave and Eric, and as he was described, and as I hear them so beautifully spoken of just before me, I thought of lines from the scriptures about the ultimate purpose of why we're here. And Jesus at one point says, I have come into the world that you may learn how to have life to the full, life abundant. And if you at least get that and don't waste your life and fully grab it, that you'll know what I mean, and you will know my Father in heaven. I thought of how Jesus and what it meant to him when it came time for him to move forward with his life. He turned to people and took a risk and said, would you be willing to come with me? And Greg described to me yesterday as I was speaking to him how whenever Dave wanted to go on a climb, Greg said, sure. And I assume it went the other way too. It's not a small thing in the world when you ask someone if they would join you and they say yes. Every time. Like you who are married and said yes once, those words of power and making, and then every day of your life, it's something like, sure, I'll join you. These men were close to the heart of the gospel and what Jesus meant when he came to show us how to live. And that's why we should learn from them. Greg, I was stunned when you described in your talk that you just gave how when they found Dave, it was his arm that you noticed. Because from the moment I first heard the news, for some reason, what I kept seeing in my mind was this arm holding an ice axe on a high mountain of the world. That's what I kept seeing. It haunted me. And I thought as he held onto that axe of how little ones, when they're young and they get afraid, and they reach that hand out, and there's always someone there to grab it, and they hold on. And how at the end, he was holding on. He was not going to give up because his friend Eric was not giving up on him. That's what people do when they really get it. And I found that there arose in my mind this kind of vision. And I imagined, I have no idea, what Eric said to Dave when he said, I'm going to go get help. Dave, I think you're in trouble. I'll get help. I've been in such circumstances, and when you get to do that, it fills you with gladness that you get to save the life of your friend. And no matter how painful, he's off to do it. And I wondered what Dave thought as his friend went away into the dark. The love he felt that someone would do that for him. I think that's why he kept trying. It was his way of saying back. And I imagined on that night on the mountain, as he felt himself starting to die, there must have been a point where he reached out. Mom, Dad, help me here. I'm afraid. I remember when I'd reach up. And they thought, not knowing, but never ceased to love him like that, like parents do. And then Shar, I pushed it too far. Remember me and don't be sad. And she's already heard that. You heard it in her voice. It's beautiful. And as he was on the mountain and feeling himself start to die, for some reason I saw suddenly at his side another climber. Surprised him in the night. Said, Dave, how you doing? He says, not too well. But you look like kind of a badass. He said, Dave, do you want to get to the top? He said, yes. I want to do this for my friend. And it's because it's the way I've always lived. I want that summit. And this climber at his side, looking remarkably filled with light, said, false summit. Keep going. I'm going to take you higher than you've ever been before. And I imagine Dave said, absolutely. And he went.
Now we're going to have some remembrances of David from John. David's brother, Niall, Dave's friend since childhood, and Matt, Dave's friend and business partner.
Thank you all for being here. For those of you that don't know me, I'm Dave's youngest older brother, John. I wrote a little something to show you how much Dave means to me and what kind of person I thought he was. David Reinhart was a true gentleman. Dave and I were fraternity brothers at OSU, and our creed for the house was called the True Gentleman. He was just that in every sense of what it meant. Dave was as genuine a person that there ever was. I've always known this, but after talking to a close friend the other night, that was the first thing that he mentioned about Dave. Dave was never fake. He gave you who he was. Dave and I were only 11 months apart, so growing up with 6 kids, we always lived in the same room and were the best of buddies. He never made me feel like just because I was adopted that I was anything but his brother. I've been told that he didn't like it much when I came because I was so neat and tidy, and that made him look bad. But I don't think it really ever made a difference with him. As kids, we did everything together. From building forts in our room, shooting baskets in the driveway, or swimming in the river in front of the house. Dave's passion for being on a mountain started at an early age, when Dad would be a ski instructor during the winter so we could all have ski passes for the season. Dave and I would always run off and ski together all day long, and would try to see how many runs we could get in a day. Didn't matter how cold it was, we were going to break the record from the previous time. Back then I could keep up with him, but I'm pretty sure he'd kick my butt today. Dave was the best little brother a kid could have. I remember on one of our family road trips to Sun Valley, we stopped at a hotel, and I don't remember who was with us, but somebody said or did something, and Dave and I were laughing so hard. It was one of the funniest moments I can ever remember. And I just remember the both of us laughing so hard for a long, long time. It's moments like that that make me miss him so much. Even though he was my little brother in age, I've always looked up to him like a big brother. When life got rough for me lately, I knew I could always go to Dave. It wasn't always smooth, but I knew he would be willing to listen and be there for me. And he was. If it wasn't for him, I wouldn't be where I am today. I've had a few people ask me since this all happened if this would set me back or not. And my answer is that it won't, because I know that Dave is looking over me. And if I did anything to upset him, he'll be all over me. Dave was my best man when I got married, and I always wanted him to find his true love. He finally did when he found this beautiful girl named Charmo. I still remember being at one of his parties and him showing me her from a distance. And I said, yeah, she's all right. He seemed pretty excited, but it was still too early to know. Then they both came down to a Beaver game with Angie and I, and we had a great time. But this is when I really knew this was the one. We came back to our house and hung out for a little while, and they decided they wanted to sing a little duet for us. Now, as most of you know, the Reinharts are not known for their singing, except for our nephews Alex and Royce. I was a little reluctant to hear them sing, but when they did their thing, I could just tell that they were in tune with each other. Not just musically, but you could see that they had something special. Shar, I'm so grateful that you came into Dave's life and made him so happy. It made me happy to see you with him. That was one thing that was always missing, and you came along and made it all perfect. I know this is hard, but I want you to know that we will always be there for you, and you will always be my sister. I love you, Shar. Dave, I just want to say thank you for being who you are, the most genuine, true gentleman a person could be. I love and miss you so much. I will remember you every day of my life, and I dedicate my life to you. I will make sure that your nephew Jason will always remember his Uncle Dave. And please look over your niece Megan for me. Dave, you are my hero, and may you rest in peace. I love you. Cheers, brother. That was good.
For those who don't know me, my name is Niall Travers. I'm a childhood friend of David's. The Reinhart family has been a very important family to me throughout my life. Dick and Susan were so very kind to me when I was a younger boy, running around the house with David and John, getting into all sorts of mischief. And then, of course, joining Dave and Craig later in life at Cressa. They've always been there for me. I've known Dave since we were 6. We've been great friends since the first day we met. I was there when his nickname, The Fine, was first coined. And I was there the day when Dave accidentally pepper sprays my mom. It wasn't a good day for Dave, nor my mom. When thinking of things to say about Dave, it was hard to figure out where to begin. He was modest but supremely confident, non-assuming, and most importantly, in all my years of knowing Dave, I never heard him say a bad word about anyone. When thinking of Dave was my mentor. He was responsible for our move to Portland because he believed I could add value to Cressa, and he took significant risk in making that opportunity happen. And that was what Dave was all about. He was selfless in approach, but a major foundation to the people he cared about. Recently, my wife Shelby and I were with Dave and Shar, having a conversation about what stokes our fire in life. For Dave, it was climbing. When asked why he liked climbing so much, his answer was interesting. And for a little background, as you all know, Dave was a very bright guy. Having worked with Dave for many years, I used to ask him questions, and instead of just blurting out a quick know-it-all answer, he used to sit there and ponder. You could actually see his brain processing the information, and he would always offer a very logical and succinct answer. So when the question was asked about climbing, he did the same thing, and his answer was clear. It is the only time in his life, where everything in his mind melts away, where his mind is completely clear, and he is 100% focused on the moment. In essence, climbing provided Dave a sense of peace. I thought that was a beautiful answer and an important one. In this day and age, we're all so busy, caught up in the day-to-day activities of our lives, that we rarely, if ever, have a chance to just clear our minds and be. For Dave, climbing was the vehicle he used to find peace, to live in the moment, and just enjoy being alive. I'm comforted in knowing he passed doing what he loved with a strong sense of peace, focused on the task at hand. Dave had a significant positive impact on all of us in this room today. He forever changed my life for the better. I'm confident he changed all of your lives for the better as well. He is loved, he will be missed, and he will forever live on as a positive force in our memories. It's actually pretty good, but I prefer mine on the rocks.
Dave was my dear friend. We met in 2004. Dave was a broker, and he called me up to negotiate a deal. I remember the call, and I remember liking Dave immediately. He was smart. I remember it being a chess match as we danced around the deal points. But Dave was armed with sound logic and always knew his next move. By the end of the call, we had agreed to terms and agreed to meet that evening for drinks to celebrate. 3 hours into our bourbons, we realized that we were not only going to have fun doing biz together, but that we would be good friends. Dave and I enjoyed the outdoors, and skiing was one of our favorite pastimes. My being one of his more urban-oriented friends, I actually remember early on in the friendship having to tell Dave that I don't do camping, and if it doesn't have a chairlift, I ain't skiing it. So with chairlifts and hotels, we had many memorable excursions: Vail, Aspen, Whistler, Jackson, and Squaw. Lost my train. And numerous weekends at Bachelor with Shar, my wife Jasmine. Dave was the ultimate ski buddy. And while we all know the rugged mountaineering side of Dave, I can vouch for a much cushier side. The side that skied into the lodge at 1 p.m., that ordered a bottle of vintage champagne accompanied by truffle fries and salmon tartare. And we decided the goal was to decide which went better with the champagne. And the final answer, coming from Dave, was only after the second bottle of vintage champagne was drunk. Dave was extremely well-rounded. He loved great wine and learning about it. He was a great chef and loved cooking with his friends. He made bourbon in his basement, learned how to do it on his own. Charity was always very important to Dave. He was on the board of Albertina Kerr. He was passionate about supporting shelters for animals. And most of all, he was a family guy. Dave would very often talk to me about the close relationships that he had with his parents, Dick and Susan. He would talk about the great relationship that he had with his siblings. And most of all, the amazing life that he shared with his wife, Shar. Dave had a magnetic personality. You just wanted to be around Dave. He was outwardly strong, but a teddy bear on the inside. He was sensitive, intelligent. He always had a reasonable approach to problem solving. And his ability to make us all feel good about ourselves, that was so Dave, and it was so there, whether you were his friend, whether you were his business partner, or whether you had just met Dave. It was there. An architect we work with sent me an email this week that I want to share because I think it eloquently summarizes how all of us in this room feel about Dave. He said, "This project and working with him has blessed me with the opportunity to undeniably validate the many positive perceptions I have always had of Dave. He was so consistent, professional, and considerate. Doing business with him always felt truly collaborative. He was so versatile in business settings, able to distill complex issues into workable parts, and able to facilitate a path forward which addressed the needs of all of those involved. He was profoundly knowledgeable, but always evoked a willingness to learn more." Dave was a man that always tried to learn more and embraced challenge. At Felton Properties, Dave dove in headfirst to what for him was a new side of the business and a new challenge. In a short 18 months, Dave developed an incredible aptitude for our business model. He swiftly surmised how and where we could improve, adeptly instituted change, and expanded our business. The magnitude of his contributions were so evident, and the results of his efforts so tangible. Right before he left for his trip, I remember he was ducking into my office, and he came with the smile that we all know Dave has, and he had just leased another vacancy in our building in Denver. And he walked in and he said, "Maddie, ring the bell, we got another one done." I'll never forget the high five moments with Dave. And Dave made so many bells ring, it was like a chime. And the beautiful part about Dave is that he never allowed it to all be about him. He insisted that we all ring the bell right alongside with him. It was always a team effort, even if it was mostly him that had created it. Each of us in this room, in one way or another, have rang the bell with Dave. And that feeling, there just aren't words. It was a great ride, and it came to an end far too soon. But I will cherish the time that we did get to share, and I will never forget my dear friend Dave. Cheers. Not drinking this month, but
Now we're going to enjoy a song by Travis Rush, Eric and Greg's friends since childhood.
Hi, everybody. My name's Travis, and it's great to see so many people here from home. I'm a friend of Eric's, and I promised all these guys that I wouldn't lose it, because then they're going to lose it. So I have, Greg was up here a second ago talking about describing all the things that Eric has done, and he makes him sound like a superhero. And it's funny because as a little kid, the Nourse boys, they were superheroes to me. And I was remembering a funny story my dad likes to tell about how I came home one day and I just out of the blue told him that I wanted to change my name from Travis to either Greg or Eric. I didn't care. And he thinks it's real funny to tell everybody that. So I have idolized these guys since I was little, and I have a quick story. When we were in preschool, there were these crossbars in our preschool that had, they were made out of wood, and they seemed like a tower then. I was only 4 years old, but there was this girl in the class that was her name was Kenya, and she used to just beat the rest of us up. She would bite and scratch and kick, and she terrorized us. We were all afraid of her. And she'd climb up on top of this wood playground set and wouldn't let any of us on there. And one day, Eric, like a monkey, jumped right up and got up on the top and just shoved her off. And of course, all of us were super excited, and that was the beginning of me idolizing Eric and saying, yeah, I think I want to spend the rest of my life with those two guys on my team. So I'm going to sing a song here, and Greg, when he asked me to sing, I was honored, of course, and it may seem like a strange choice, so he thought I maybe should explain why I chose this. And the song Walking in Memphis, if any of you, I'm sure you've all heard it. I don't know if you really have paid attention to what the song means before, but Mark Cohn, who wrote the song, he's talking about, he got on an airplane and flew to Memphis and to pursue a passion, something that he loved and he wanted to go after with everything he had. And he talks about the spirits and the legends in that city, Elvis and B.B. King, W.C. Handy, these musicians that to him were legends that inspired him to become the musician that he soon became. And Eric is somewhat of a legend to me, and I think he probably is to a lot of us that know him and have known him that long. And so that's part of why I chose it. And the other is the last time I talked to Eric on the phone, he kept asking me when I was going to come out to Colorado and do a show there. And I never made it. So I guess better late than never. So I'm going to do this for him. So thanks. Quick sip of this.
We're going to need this.
All right, here we go. Put on my blue suede shoes and I boarded the plane. Touchdown in the land of the Delta Blues in the middle of the pouring rain. WCND, won't you look down over me? Yeah, I got a first class ticket, but I'm as blue as a boy can be. I was walking in Memphis. I'm walking with my feet 10 feet off the bill. Walking in Memphis. But do I really feel the way I feel? Saw the ghost of Elvis on Union Avenue. Followed him up to the gates of Graceland, and I watched him walk right through. Now, security, they did not see him. He was hovering around his tomb. There's a pretty little thing waiting for the king, and down in the jungle room, well, I was walking in Memphis. I'm walking with my feet 10 feet off the bill. Walking in Memphis, yeah, do I really feel the way I feel? They got catfish on the table. They got gospel in the air. And Reverend Green, we'll be glad to see you when you haven't got prayer. Oh boy, well, you got a prayer in Memphis. Muriel plays piano every Friday at the Hollywood, and they brought me down to see her, and they asked me if I would do a little number. I sang with all my might. She said, tell me, are you a Christian child? And I said, ma'am, I am tonight. I'm walking in Memphis. I'm walking with my feet 10 feet off the beat. Walking in Memphis, yeah. Do I really feel the way I feel? Put on my blue suede shoes and I boarded the plane. Touchdown in the land of the Delta Blues, in the middle of the pouring rain. Touchdown in the land of the Delta Blues, in the middle of the pouring rain.
Now we're going to have some remembrances of Eric from Eric's friend John since college. His friend John is from childhood, and Matt, his friend from Colorado.
Music sometimes hits me harder than anything, so I think I'd start and end. I'm John Chesbrough. I'm a friend of Eric and Dave for over 20 years. I first met Erock and Reinhart in 1990 when I joined a fraternity at Oregon State University. Since then, I have been blessed by their friendship on a journey of 1,000 trails, rivers, belly laughs, and late-night campfires. Our annual backpacking trip has been a fixture in my summer calendar, granting me the space to explore myself and the wilds even as adult responsibilities crowd into my time. My wife has honored that commitment and supported me because she knows the depth of friendship between us.
and that such friendships are precious. I first heard about the news of Eric and Dave from our fellow annualer, Jason Fullen. My initial reaction was anger, but I didn't know who to be angry at. I reached out to other friends, grasping for details, and my anger fizzled into quiet gratefulness. I'm grateful to have spent over half my life in the company of these two great men. Reinhart was a man of many talents and many loves. In the fraternity, we had a ritual in which we learned the ways of a true gentleman. Well, Reinhart was my mentor, in which Mr. Miyagi for the process. It was not lost on me that I was learning the creed from a man who lived as a true gentleman, striving towards its ideals in all of his living days. I also loved to learn new to me sides of Dave. On an annual in the Bighorn Crags, I carried a small guitar. One evening, I laid down in a meadow to strum some tunes, and Dave instantly joined in. We sang the last few hours of Light Away with tunes like Country Roads and The Boxer. I'm sure that we were not in tune, but we were loud. I don't even know how to begin talking about Eric. I asked him for advice in buying my first backpack. We learned to kayak together. I did my first grouse hunt with him. I have hiked hundreds of miles behind him, almost always behind. And we've snored together under the stars nearly as many times. You can often tell how great a person is by the brevity of their nickname. And we didn't just call him Eric. We just called him E. And E was great. 2 summers ago, our annual trip was to hike kayaks and to float the South Fork of the Flathead River in Montana. It was supposed to be a mellow float, fly fishing, just messing around, having fun, but the water was a little high and fast. And near the end of the trip, the swift but flat river was going to narrow down into a gorge of such surging fury that not even Eric would paddle it. So we nervously paddled behind him like a bunch of baby ducklings while he scanned for the takeout. And suddenly he yelled, "This is it, get over, come on, follow me." And so we all nervously started paddling like mad and turned our boats. A couple of us fell over. We rescued them, pulled them over, but we were trapped at the side of this cliff. And it was vertical above us. And we're like, oh man, this sucks. We missed the takeout. But we're safe. And so we spent like 3 hours clawing our boats back up. We climbed up the cliff and got ropes all attached and pulled ourselves up and finally got to a safe perch up high, about 10 or 15 feet above the river. We could just collect ourselves and started laughing about it, deflating our boats. And right then, a guide came running down the trail. And he asked us why we were stopped there. We said, well, the gorge is coming. He said, oh, the gorge is another 1.5 miles downriver. Oops. So Eric felt like he needed to do a little bit of saving of his pride right there. But just a moment later, another guy comes running down the trail, and he's like, boat, boat, boat! And we look out, and there's a raft floating down without anybody in it. And so I was like, instantly, I'm like, oh, man, sucks to be that guy. Of course, Eric wasn't thinking. He was just acting. And in the span of about 5 breaths, less than that, he just grabbed the nearest kayak, grabbed the nearest paddle, and launched himself off that 15-foot cliff. And normally, like if you're watching an action movie or something, and someone launches themselves off a 15-foot cliff, and he wasn't wearing a shirt, and he was wearing a real bear tooth around his neck on a necklace, you'd say, like, that's a little over the top. But this was Nourse, and he was over the top. And he landed in that water, body and boat and paddle in perfect concert. And within 5 strokes, he was to the raft, hauled up his kayak, grabbed the oars, turned it around, paddled back to the shore before any of us could even mention what was happening. And that was how he lived. He loved that. He loved the challenge and reward of rescuing someone or something. And I think we all have a story of Eric saving our butts. It would be easy to classify Eric as just a glory-seeking adventurer, but that would be incomplete. You see, Eric was a caregiver. Candy has shared several stories of Eric's big heart. Their house is beautifully maintained. The cords of firewood are dry and tall. The freezer is filled with wild game. Eric loved and cared for his chickens. When a rooster caused problems at home, Eric decided to take it with him to work. In the cab of his truck. Many of us know Skookum, who Eric loved and who Eric gave one hell of a good life, because Eric lived one hell of a good life. Someday, ask one of us about how he rescued Skookum on Elk Creek. It's phenomenal. Today, I feel blessed to have had such great men as friends. I will miss them dearly, but I am also fortunate. And if life is a story, I've been fortunate to write some tales with amazing characters and amazing friends. And they will live me for the rest of my days. Cheers to them.
They're going to make me be the one to do it, huh? My name is John Kopeniak. I've been fortunate enough to know Eric and Greg for the last 36 years. The three of us lived up Hunter Creek Road in Gold Beach. My house was about a mile from theirs. The closeness and proximity meant there were plenty of opportunities for adventure. As I was trying to think of the best story to tell all of you about Eric, the words from a Robert Frost poem, "The Road Not Taken," kind of kept repeating in my head. The lines at the end of the poem read, "Two roads diverged in a wood, and I took the one less traveled by." It was almost as if these lines had been written for Eric. Although for him, it would have said, "And I made my own path through the woods." Because that's what he would do. He liked going places nobody had ever been before, doing things that had never been done. At the end of the summer, going into our junior year of high school, we went for a drive up Hunter Creek in Eric and Greg's old Ford Bronco. We went up to High Bridge, which is about 8 miles up the creek. And for the most part, that time of the year, the creek was dried, pretty much dried up, except for pools of water in the deeper areas. Eric decided that it would be fun to go back down Hunter Creek in the creek bed. So off we went driving down the creek. Why drive a four-wheel drive rig down a boring old paved road that everybody else drives on, right? So off we went, driving down the creek, but there seemed to be more creek driving and less gravel bar driving with every mile that we went down. We made it past the two swinging bridges on the way down. Then we went past Dustin Smith's house, and then mine, and eventually we made it back all the way back to Eric's house in the creek. We had plenty of opportunities to get on the road, but we were having fun, and we were getting excited about the prospect of making it all the way to the beach. The closer we got, the more excited we became. The closer we got, the deeper the water was getting. When we were about a quarter of a mile away from the beach, the water was almost up to the top of the hood level, pouring in around the doors and onto the floorboards. And we were pushing an impressive wave of water and algae in front of the Bronco. It was at this point that the Bronco stalled, leaving us sitting in the middle of Hunter Creek, right behind Hunter Creek Tavern. We weren't able to get it started again, so that meant getting a little bit wet and getting a friend to come help. And Brad Kelly came down in his dad's pickup and winched us out. That trip wasn't a complete success. But who else can say that they've driven in Hunter Creek all the way from High Bridge to almost the beach? In 1997, the Rogue River reached one of its highest flood levels ever recorded. What most people saw as disaster, Eric saw as an opportunity. Is this considered holy now that you've taken a drink out of it? Okay. All right. He loaded up his raft and his dog Skookum and headed over the mountain to Galice. Starting at Graves Creek, he rafted all the way to Gold Beach in one day, a distance of approximately 80 miles. I believe he was scolded by one of the sheriff's deputies for doing that. I don't think he really cared. It was about that same time, around that same time, that he took a chainsaw and he cleared out multiple logs that crossed Lobster Creek, just a small creek up the river. He then got his kayak and became the first person to descend Lobster Creek. Listening to him tell that story, it was quite a wild ride. Most people hear these stories and just shake their heads, wondering what would make someone want to do these things. Where does this innate desire to do unthinkable things come from? I don't think that it's anything that's learned. I truly believe it's something you're born with. When I was 10 years old, I had a little Honda 50 dirt bike. Eric and Greg were over at my house one day, and we were taking turns riding it around the yard. There was a big mound of dirt in my yard, and they thought it was pretty neat that I could ride up to the top, stop up there, and then ride back down the other side. They both tried over and over to ride it up to the top and stop there, but they would either forget to let off on the throttle and send the bike flying off the other side, or they wouldn't give it enough gas to get to the top, causing the bike to roll and tumble back down. I remember standing there watching them and seeing not only a look of frustration on their faces, but also one of determination. I think this was the only time in my life that I was able to do something that the Nourses couldn't do. But that was only for a short time, though, because they both ended up mastering the needed skills. And then they dominated that mound of dirt. Only now do I realize how symbolic that moment was. The drive and determination in Eric and Greg has only grown throughout the years. And that mound of dirt became mountains that almost reached the stars. 2 roads diverged in a wood, and I took the one less traveled by. And that has made all the difference. Eric, you will be missed. Candy, Shar, you are incredible women. Here's to Dave and Eric.
Matt Leach, a friend of Eric's from his time in Colorado. I'd like to spend the next few minutes talking to you about the Eric that I knew. Probably the first thing that you noticed when meeting Eric was his outgoing demeanor and ready smile. As you got to know Eric a little better, you realized that he was the life of the party, the spark for any gathering. He had a brand of physical humor that would have you in stitches in no time. One time, on a trip we'd done with a group that previously hadn't met Eric, I noticed that he'd been gone from camp for a while one evening. Minutes later, this guy with a mullet, bad teeth, and skin-tight cutoffs wanders into camp. He proceeds to get friendly with some of the people, asking embarrassing, overly personal questions. Eric sold it so well that most of the group was getting nervous. They didn't realize it was him, until I blew his cover by laughing so hard I literally doubled over. Later, I asked him how had he gotten so good at portraying this hillbilly character. Lots of practice at Walmart was the answer. He'd been doing his shopping trips in character and costume. Most of the people that I've met in my life that were gregarious and the life of the party also weren't worth very much when things got tough. Eric was not like that at all. When the chips were down and the situation serious, he had a focus and tenacity unlike anyone I've ever known. I saw this side of Eric on the very first trip that we'd done together, a raft trip in Cataract Canyon on the Colorado River. We had arrived at the largest rapid on the run about the same time as another group that we did not know that was also running the river. That group went first, and all ran the rapid fine except for the last boat. That boat, containing a family with small children, hit 2 rocks and became pinned in the middle of the river. The Colorado is a large river, and this group was too far from the shore for anyone to be able to throw a rope to them to try and unpin the boat. Fortunately for them, Eric Nourse was on the scene. Eric grabbed a ball of twine, threw it in a borrowed kayak, and was paddling towards them in under a minute. There wasn't a way that he could paddle directly to the boat due to where it was pinned, so he paddled into a small eddy behind a boulder in the middle of the river and proceeded to climb and swim his way back up the rapid towards them. When he was within throwing distance, he tossed them one end of the twine, carrying the ball with him as he worked his way back down the river to the kayak. He then proceeded to ferry the kayak back across the river, holding the twine in his teeth as he did so. The twine allowed the pinned group to pull a climbing rope that Eric had over to their boat and tie it to the frame. We were then able to pull the boat free with the strength of our group and a mechanical advantage pulley system called a Z-drag that Eric had set up. In the years and trips that went by, it became apparent that this was no aberration. Whenever someone on the river was in trouble and needed help, he was always the first to act and in the lead. To do otherwise would have been impossible for him. Eric was also generous, not only on trips or in helping out those that needed a hand, but also in everyday ways that showed you that generosity was one of his core values. One example that comes to mind is a gathering that my wife and I hosted the year before last. At one point in the evening, the conversation had turned to the fact that Eric had built Candy a chicken coop, and they were now in the chicken ranching business. My wife made an offhand comment about how nice it must be to have fresh eggs, and the conversation then moved on to other areas. The next morning at 9 a.m., there was a knock on my door. It was Eric, dressed in his motorcycle gear. He said he was out riding in the neighborhood and thought he'd stop by. This seemed strange to me since we lived about 30 minutes away from each other. He then proceeded to pull 24 fresh eggs out of his carefully padded motorcycle pannier and give them to my wife. These few stories that I've shared are just the tip of the iceberg. There were other facets of Eric's life in Colorado that I was only tangentially involved in. He was a builder whose craftsmanship and attention to detail were apparent both on the job site and in the memorials he built for those lost on the river. He loved to ride motorcycles, go target shooting and hunting, and probably a half dozen other activities that I don't have time to mention. He was a loving and visibly affectionate husband to Candy, and a good stepfather and role model for her boys, Brody and Logan. To sum up Eric in a few minutes is an impossible task. If I had to try and do it with just a few words, though, I would choose the same ones that my wife did when she found out that Eric was no longer with us. He is just irreplaceable, one of a kind. Well, somebody had to do it.
Get another bottle. Now, Lisa's brother, Steve, or excuse me, David's brother, Steve, is going to have a reading.
Just so all of you know, I am the oldest brother. As I was thinking about what I wanted to say today, I came across a writing by Pope John Paul II entitled The Spirituality of Mountain Climbing. This is an excerpt that I believe Dave speaks of Dave and Eric and the lives that they lived. If it is true that sports activity in developing and perfecting the physical and psychological potential of the person contributes a more complete maturity of the character, this is essentially true for those who practice mountain climbing and engage in it in its respect for the ideals which the sport sustains and nourishes. It is a lesson in spiritual elevation, of an energy which is more moral than physical. It gives you a respect for nature and a deepened examination of the message which she imparts to the human spirit. It requires rigorous virtues in those who practice it: strict discipline, self-control, a spirit of sacrifice and dedication, care and solidarity for others. We can say the mountain climbing develops character. In fact, it would not be possible to face the difficulties of life on the mountain if the physical and muscular strength, which is very necessary, were not sustained by a strong will and an intelligent passion for beauty. It causes one to enjoy ever more deeply in their mind the message of creation. It causes, in contact with the beauties of the mountains, in the face of spectacular grandeur and peaks, the fields of snow and the immense landscapes, man enters into himself and discovers the beauty of the universe shines not only in the framework of the heavens, but also that of the soul that allows itself to be enlightened and seeks to give meaning to life. From the things that it contemplates, in fact, the spirit is lifting up to God on the breath of prayer and gratitude towards the Creator. Blessed are the pure in heart, for they shall see God. David and Eric loved life and fought to their last breath. They reached out to touch the hand of God, and God took their hand, and God carried them home. I want to thank you for sharing the love of David, Eric, and their families by being here with us today. And I'd like to toast my parents and Eric's mom and family. Thanks for all being here.
Well, thank you all for coming today. We've got a video with a song that we wanted to play that would help you to experience everything that Dave and Eric love.
And I am putting a pan in on the Valon hut. And then what we did is we went up there. Where did we cross? We went down all the way up and around. And then that lowest ridge line, we went up that coal and then down it. It looks like a vertical face. And then, which is right here, we went down that. And then we went up that ice field all the way to the top here. Then we climbed up the backside and ended up on the summit. After that, we backtracked, went back down here. We went down that coal right there. That couloir right there. And then we skied down that face, and we ended up going up and down all of these moraines, which are actually pretty steep, several hundred feet apiece. And then we went up this that snowfield right here, all the way up, gained about 1,300 feet, all the way up to where Reinhart is.
Bottles of beer and slush on my skis. Raccoon eyes gotta kick up my feet. I loosen my boots and let my toes wiggle around. Shot of tequila, watch the people falling down mountain run. See now, isn't that fun? Waterlogged gloves and an empty mug. Après sunshine just sucking it up. My eyes are glazed and my thoughts are gushing. My nose is red and my muscles are mush.
We're taking one right now.
I just can't seem to get enough of it.
So we've got a lot of distance to ski and climb.
And maybe I was born to be a ski bum. My life's living has been what most people dream of. I was born in the mountains and it's been snowing all my life. Now what do I care? Just living here, a ski bum. Just a lazy low ski bum. It's 4 o'clock and it's the final run. And I'm as drunk as a skunk under that Lake Tahoe sun. And I'm out of control and I'm a-coming on down. I got a world full of speed and I ain't slowing down. And if you get in my way, well, I can't say what'll happen to you. I didn't mean to run you over now, but maybe I was born to be a ski bum. 'Cause my life's living has been what most people dream of. And I was born in the mountains and it's been snowing all my life. Now what do I care? I'm just living here, a ski bum. bars that serve cheap cocktails. And I hibernate in the summertime on a beach with a beer and a dream that I can fly. Oh, dare and keep dreaming now, 'cause maybe I wasn't born to be a ski bum. 'Cause my life's living has been what most people dream of. And I was born in the mountains and it's been snowing all my life now, but what do I care? I'm just living here. Maybe I was born to be a ski bum. 'Cause my life's living isn't been what most people dream of. And I was born in the mountains and it's been snowing all my life now, but what do I care? I'm just living.
Thank you all for coming to celebrate the lives of Dave and Eric. And please join us in the library for a reception so we can continue to celebrate. Thank you.
I saw a black branch with blood that kept dripping. I saw a room full of men with their hammers bleeding.